My name is Alex DeGeorgey, and I'm happy to be talking today. I realize that if I stand in just the right spot, I can have antlers on my head. um, so today's talk is going to be about a cremated remains recovery project that we've been working on for a number of years. I'm happy to share this information with a wider audience. It is directly related to climate change issues, which is the root cause of this stuff. I'm sure you've all are all aware that California has been experiencing a series of catastrophic wildfires, and that's what has triggered this work. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I have a PowerPoint, a lovely PowerPoint to present. I just need to remember how things work. So can someone confirm that you can see my screen? Thank you, Jamie. Okay, from the beginning. Okay, so the title of the talk is Ashes from Ashes. Recovering human cremated remains from catastrophic wildfires. Let's see, I'm going to advance my slide. So I wear a couple of different hats. First off, in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm an archaeological consultant. My wife and I own a mom and pop CRM company, cultural resource management company here in California. We provide archaeological services for private and public entities. We also founded a nonprofit, Alta Heritage Foundation, that was born of fire. Literally, you know, this volunteer effort has become so large that we really needed to add a structure to doing this kind of work. And the Alta Heritage Foundation is working in wildfire areas, helping families recover the ashes of persons that were cremated and kept in the home when their house was destroyed by the wildfire. We are also working with the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, doing recoveries of missing service personnel. Next month we'll be going to Poland, and I'll be working on 2 sites in Poland. These are bomber crash sites, looking for missing service personnel there. And we also have kind of the third part of our nonprofit, the wildfire work, the DPA recovery work. The third aspect is really revolving around climate change, which is a related issue to the cremated remains recovery. So kind of a story arc here. I'll talk about the origins of cremated remains recovery, kind of the methods and techniques that we've developed to do this kind of work, given that this is something that hasn't been done in the past. We really had to innovate methods. I'll provide a couple of stories of what it's like doing this kind of work. And then, you know, talk about what it all means and where we're heading with this stuff. So in October of 2017, about 4 years ago, a series of massive wildfires broke out in one night, 4 fires. So I should point out that Santa Rosa is where I live in Northern California. This is San Francisco. It's about an hour north of San Francisco. So these wildfires break out in the middle of the night. It was a very dry year, a drought year. The other conditions that were important here are the Santa Ana winds, which are generally kind of attributed to a Southern California phenomenon. It's a warm, dry wind that blows from the inland towards the coast. And the winds were that night were up to 70 miles an hour. The vegetation was dry due to the drought, and we had a dense housing, of course. And those conditions, the Tubbs Fire started near Calistoga, about 15 miles from the city of Santa Rosa. But within a couple of hours, it grew to 20,000 acres and pushed downhill at over 50 miles an hour. This fire was spreading so fast that you could not escape it in a car. 3 o'clock in the morning, it entered the city of Santa Rosa and started burning the city. People had moments to leave their homes. It destroyed whole neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, businesses. It was very catastrophic. It burned for several days, and there were mandatory evacuations. In the end, it destroyed about 180,000 acres of land, over 8,000 structures, and 42 people died. It was one of the most destructive wildfires in California history. And when these fires burn at that scale, there's no one coming to put them out. There's just too much fire. So the city burned for days. And it reduces buildings. A 2-story stucco building will be reduced to nothing but a few inches of ash. It's incredible the scale of destruction. Whole neighborhoods were completely wiped out. Our family was fortunate. We lived in downtown. The fire never reached there, but we did evacuate. And when this kind of catastrophe happens, you're compelled to, you want to help. You want to jump in and try to figure out what you can do to help your community. And I was volunteering with the Red Cross and things, but there was just such an abundance of volunteers. They were actually turning people away. And one of my coworkers came up to me at work. I work in a shared building with engineers, and he had lost his home in Coffee Park, which was kind of the epicenter of the fire when it tore through this neighborhood. And in his home, he had both the ashes of his mother and his father, and he was distraught that he didn't have a chance to do what his parents had asked him to do, which was, take them to this special place. And he asked if there's anything that can be done, knowing that I'm an archaeologist and that I sometimes work with human remains. And I said, well, let me see what I could do. And I called some friends who have worked with the Institute for Canine Forensics, and got them involved. And they brought the dog team out to Santa Rosa. They searched my friend Kurt's remains of his home and were successful in finding these ashes. The dogs are trained to detect human remains. And that was how this whole process started. That event got shared in the newspaper, and suddenly we were inundated with folks calling for help that were in similar circumstances, who had lost their homes, had remains in the homes, and were worried that. So one of the things that I should mention, when you have a catastrophic fire like this, what happens is the Federal Emergency Agency gets in there, FEMA, and they'll scrape up all of these houses and haul off the debris, which is toxic substances, to a dump. And folks were distraught to think that their family members' remains would be scraped up and placed in a toxic waste dump. And that only added trauma to an already horrible situation, right? So there was an urgency to help these people. So we assembled a volunteer crew of archaeologists and canine forensic teams to go out into Santa Rosa to search these houses. Not sure that how successful we're going to be, so we're adapting archaeological methods to this current situation. And basically, what we started doing was, I'll kind of walk you through what we've developed as a process. So we arrive at the site. We've already had contact with the landowner, who's described, some of the things that we need to know. We do a site assessment. We look, for access. We look at debris and toxic substances. If there's a standing chimney and we need to work near it, is the chimney stable enough to be near it? Is it a suspended load situation, or is this a two-story building and there's standing walls to consider? When these buildings burn, they vaporize all sorts of different chemicals that were in the house, paints, all the building material, and now that stuff is dry powder ash. So we're wearing respirators and Tyvek suits. So we do the safety sweep. We interview the client who's there. Oftentimes it's the first time they've been back to the home since it was destroyed. So they're in a trauma state. And we have to be careful about addressing their emotional needs while we're trying to conduct this work. We ask the client, who are we looking for? Is this your husband, your daughter? What were they kept in? Were they kept in a wooden box, which probably didn't survive, or was it a ceramic urn, which potentially we could still find? And where in the home? Can you point to where in the debris and wreckage of your home where we should look? And they'll say, okay, they were kept on the bureau in the back bedroom next to the bed. And they'll point to the corner of the house, and you'll see the melted remains of the box spring mattress. So you'll have a proximity of where to look, kind of that probative approach that forensic archaeologists use to zero in on where to go. So after the client interview, this is an example of what we're dealing with, right? You walk up to a home in Santa Rosa. This was a two-story stucco. They were artists. They had lots of beautiful things that were destroyed in the home. And we're looking for a small pile of ash in this debris and wreckage, which looks impossible. This looks like finding a needle in a pile of needles. I'm still astounded that we can do this work, but we're successful most of the time. So you walk up, then the next step is we get the dogs involved after we've conducted the interview. The Institute for Canine Forensics is a group of folks here in California that they train their dogs to detect human remains, either human ashes or human bone. These are not live find dogs, so they're not trained, they're not cross-trained. They're specifically trained to find remains. When I started working with the dogs, I was skeptical, having had no experience with this in the past. I have since become a believer. We, through this process, have worked with the canine forensic teams perhaps more than any other archaeologist. I've seen the dogs work hundreds of times. It's incredible what they can do. So the dogs, after the interview, we have the dogs do a sweep of the wreckage and they're looking for the odor of these remains. And odor will collect in pools and attach to things. And when they detect the scent, they'll alert, and their alert is to lie down, generally facing the source of the scent. So here's an alert, right? Echo and her handler, Karen, Echo's detected the scent, And Echo is saying that it's on the stairwell outside of the house. So these ashes were kept upstairs in an upstairs bedroom. And they subsequently, when the home burned, the building collapsed, and these ended up outside of the building footprint. So after the first dog works, we bring in a second dog. This is Annie. She's a remarkable dog. She searches the wreckage. The dog didn't watch the first dog work. It's not being guided by the handler. The dog will alert, and then invariably they alert at the same location. So we have a verification, right? Kind of a blind test thing. So now between the client interview and the dog alert, we've really narrowed down our search area. And then the archaeologists get out, and we're going to conduct the dig. The archaeological methods are somewhat similar to what we use in standard practice, although we don't use any screens because we're trying to find a pocket of ash, and it's a lot looser. This is a very narrow objective: find these remains and bring them back to their family. So the first thing we do is we'll walk around and just trying to visually identify the ashes if they're present on the surface. We have focused the search area through the dogs and the client interview, and then we begin an excavation. And basically what we do is we'll have identified this area to search, and we start outside of that area, the excavation. And we'll dig through the ash down to sterile sediments, create a perimeter around where we think that the ashes may be, and then slowly excavate towards our target, creating a negative known excavated out zone. So we're moving towards the target in a way that will isolate the feature and clear debris. And so this is basically shovel broadcast. We're digging, does this have remains? No, toss it and create this perimeter block until we identify ashes. Then we'll isolate it, pedestal it like you would a feature, and then recover it. So here we're doing the visual inspection about where the dog's alerted. I'm seeing small bits of ash that are scattered. Apparently, when this thing crashed over outside of the building, it spread out. So this is a really bad situation for us to try to recover ashes. We like to find a pocket of ash, but we're seeing what looks to be human ash among the wreckage. And then Mike Newland and I are working to recover some of this ash. It's going to be commingled with the building materials. Mike, I should mention, is also very focused on climate change issues and has been running surveys on the California coast now for almost a decade in advance of our loss of those sites with sea level rise. We were thinking with all these climate change models that sea level rise was going to be the main killer out here, and it turns out we were wrong. Wildfires have really struck us hard, and we're the first climate change catastrophe. So human cremains have certain key characteristics. I should probably talk about how these are formed as part of kind of the site formation process with human cremains. Let me catch up with my notes. So human cremains have characteristics that are markedly different from ordinary ash, and understanding the cremation process provides us some important clues that can help in their identification. So I interviewed several morticians to get a better sense of this process, and here's what I learned. So at the crematorium, a body is placed in a retort, and it's incinerated at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The remaining bone is then set through a mechanical grinder, and the small bits of, although it goes through this process, there will be small bits of bone and teeth still present in the ash that's recognizable. And human cremains have a distinct color. It's a yellowish salmon color generally, although we see a variety of colors. And what I'm showing you here is we've isolated this pocket of ash. This is human cremains right here, right? And it's different than this, which is burnt drywall, right? It's also homogeneous in that it's a package of fine ash, where most of the building material is going to be a heterogeneous mix of different textures and sizes, right? So those are a couple of things to cue in on. The human cremains, when you hold it in your fingers and rub it between your fingers, it's gritty due to the small broken bone, whereas drywall and other building materials will be silky. So something to cue in on to help find it. This is also human cremains. This is an unusual yellow color. These are teeth, bits of teeth that are still present. You can find those things. And here's an example of human cremains that we were found on the surface during the surface sweep of the site. So here you've got all the burnt drywall and plumbing pipes and wires. And this is a pocket of homogeneous ash that's a tan to salmon color. This is the human cremains, all right? And I guess I should clarify again, I get this question in almost every talk. We're not looking for folks that died because of the fire, this wildfire. We're looking for human cremains. So we're not involved with the sheriff's office. All of the folks that we're helping find died prior to the fire and were stored in the home by the family, right? And we're helping recover those heirloom objects. So after we find the ashes, the remains, we give them back to the family members who invariably are really just awestruck by it, and it's a very meaningful thing. I haven't experienced something like this before. It's one of the most meaningful things you can do in archaeology is to be able to help these people reunite themselves with their family members. So we give it back to the family members, and then we go to the next site because we're doing 3 or 4 of these a day in some of these catastrophic fires. So I'm going to tell a couple of recovery stories about what it's like doing this kind of work, kind of personal narratives to give you a better sense. Let's see if I can get through. One of them is harder for me to tell without crying, so I'll just say ahead of time that may happen. So the first story is Lenore Hansen's home, and this was actually one of the first sites that we worked in 2017. Somewhere in the twisted mass of debris and ruins of Lenore Hansen's home were the remains of her 30-year-old daughter, Erin, who died of cancer, leaving behind 2 sons. Lenore kept her daughter's ashes in a wooden box in the bedroom closet, and there was no time to grab the box when the firestorm bore down on Lenore's creekside home. The fire destroyed Lenore's home, and now Erin's ashes were mixed in the mass of collapsed walls, broken furniture, and layers of debris. Lenore pointed to the part of the devastated house where Erin's ashes were kept. Lynn called her dog Piper, here, a black border collie, to examine the scene. I love Piper. Cautiously stepping through the ruins, Piper searched the area adjacent to broken cinder block walls and around deformed metal objects. Periodically testing the air for faint odors, Piper's careful gait abruptly stiffened. Having picked up the scent, she immediately laid down, alerting Lynn that she smelled what we were looking for. We carefully troweled through the loose ash and rubble, exposing the ground where the dog signaled, then progressing inward in an effort to identify, isolate, and expose the cremated remains. After minutes of searching, we found a discrete pocket of ash, faint red colored. Picking through the deposit, we recognized small bits of bone. We'd found Erin's ashes. So that was, this was this was the recovery that really sold me on this. When I realized we could do this kind of work, it kind of struck me as a moral imperative. Knowing that this is possible means that we should do it. And we've been building a program to support it ever since. Okay, this second story is from Kimberly Wooten. Hi, Kim. She came out and volunteered on this in Santa Rosa, wrote this really, what I find to be one of the most meaningful narratives that have come out of the fires. And it provides a great perspective of what it's like to be an archaeologist doing this kind of work. Let's see. When you watch a disaster like the fires in Northern California play out across your television, you sit in your own home, 100 miles away, knowing that there's no possible way to help these communities out, to help their friends, to help your friends, waiting to find out if their homes are intact. When the opportunity came to work with canine units in an attempt to recover cremated remains of loved ones, my husband and I, both archaeologists, knew it was a way to help, not just the people of Santa Rosa who literally lost everything, but a way to help ourselves deal with the devastation. Most archaeologists are familiar with dead people. I've excavated the skeletons of both children and adults, and we're attuned to even the smallest bits of bone of human bone or teeth. But those are the remains of long dead people with no known family, whose families are also long dead. Being an archaeologist doesn't prepare you for the emotional toll of reuniting loved ones with the remains of a parent or a child, a sibling, or a spouse. Handing someone the ashes of their father while covered in the ash of their former homes and surrounded by the charred and broken remains of their lives is utterly overwhelming. As an archaeologist, you can't just look through the cremated remains. You can't just look for the cremated remains. Trowel through an entire home now compacted to 6 inches of ash without seeing the rest of the destruction. A small ceramic elephant, a record collection, melted Christmas decorations, grandma's porcelain collection. You want to gather it all up, return all of it to the owners. Archaeologists are used to bits of people's lives, but not like this, not on such a scale, and not with living people connected to those artifacts. In the end, the most impactful moment for me was watching another crew member recover the remains of a 40-year-old woman who died earlier that year. Watching her mother hold her daughter's remains broke every barrier that had kept me from crying with the previous homeowners. After a day, both physically and emotionally exhausting, it was hard to see this mother's pain. I tried to be discreet and cry away from the family, but I still caught someone's attention. The human remains detection dog we've been working with all day, Piper, came over and lay down next to me, putting her head in my lap, demanding I pet her. It was an amazing healing moment on every level. So to me, that is really a moving piece. I feel like I've experienced that over and over again. And I think Kimberly has so well articulated what it's like to be on the ground doing this kind of work. So I thank you for that, Kim. In summary, we've developed some methods for doing this kind of work. You know, what I presented here is just a brief snapshot. We've come a long way. We have forms that we're recording information on to help us track what we've done, become better at our job. We have a better understanding of site formation processes, how these sites form, and where to look. So that was the first fire, right? 2017, the Tubbs fire. That was our inauguration into this kind of work, and it turned out that was just a primer for years to come. The following year, 2018, we responded to 4 wildfires. The Carr Fire in Northern California near Redding created a fire tornado and burned about 4,000 homes. The Woolsey Fire in Ventura County was catastrophic. We worked down there. And then the Camp Fire was eclipsed all previous fires, destroying the entire town of Paradise, parts of Magalia and Concal. We assembled a team and went to the Camp Fire. 85 archaeologists worked on that project for 3 months. In total, we donated over 5,000 hours of personal time. It was hard to describe how the destruction that we witnessed in the Camp Fire. One day we encountered a reporter from National Geographic who started following us around. His normal beat is wars. So he covers wars in Africa. And he said the only time he sees this level of destruction is genocide, when all the infrastructure is destroyed, all the buildings, hospitals, schools, sewer lines, all of it's gone. Oh. So this fire, you can see smoke all the way to the East Coast. And we did a lot of work there. And then the following year, we got a bit of a reprieve. 2019, there was only about 250,000 acres in California burned in 2019. I know that sounds like a small number, or it sounds like a large number, I should say, but not in the current climate paradigm. Again, portions of Santa Rosa burned, the hills of Sonoma County. Here we're doing a recovery in the Kincaid Fire. This was, there's 4 sets of cremains that we're recovering here. The owner of this house kept them, this was called the spirit closet, because he kept the cremains in the bottom drawer and all the liquor on top. And then in 2020, last year, unprecedented wildfires. This is a screenshot from September of last year of active wildfires in California and Oregon. Over 5 million acres in California and Oregon burned. We responded to 11 wildfires throughout California and Oregon. To date, we've, let's see, I guess that's the next slide. Yeah, last year was tough. Between COVID, race riots, and wildfires, 2020 was a bummer. To date, we've had 180 volunteers sign up to do this kind of work. We've worked in 15 wildfires. These are all national disaster areas. We've excavated 301 sites and conducted recoveries on 364 sets of human cremains. Having done that much work, we're a lot better at doing this stuff than we were when we started. 20 of the most destructive fires in California history have occurred in the last few years. We're currently in a severe drought, and we expect similar fires in the future. This is a drought map from this month. So dark red is severe drought. The Western United States is in one of the worst droughts in over 400 years. I'm reading climate articles by archaeologists looking at climate history back to the Altithermal. And this year is one of the worst years ever. We're expecting, due to climate change, the current drought situation, wildfire risk is at an all-time high. And we expect to be busy this year. So recovery is possible. You know, looking at a disaster scene, you may think this is an impossible endeavor. We can do this. It's essential. I think we are morally compelled to do this work to help people. As far as archaeology, you know, archaeologists are constantly having to justify that what we do is relevant and meaningful. And this is meaningful to contemporary populations in a very significant way. It's rewarding for archaeologists to do this kind of work. I have to say that it's some of the most interesting and meaningful work that I've ever done. And we have to take action. You know, climate change is real. We're looking at, we can expect future disasters to occur. And one of the biggest hurdles, maybe not surprisingly, is to get agency involvement, right? So I mentioned, you know, the federal agencies come into these areas after a disaster and clean them up. And they're hauling people's remains to toxic waste dumps. We've reached out to congressmen, the Army Corps of Engineers, and FEMA, and really haven't got much traction. And the reason for that is that human remains are not treated as people, they're treated as objects. There's no regulatory trigger for them to support us. We get accolades like, we love what you're doing, but you know, basically we're not going to help. So I would really like to see one of the biggest hurdles we need to get over is to get agencies to support this kind of work, to make it obligatory or mandated. Otherwise, people are going to keep ending up in these bad situations, and we want to be able to help folks. So that's my talk. I hope it wasn't too heavy. The website for our nonprofit is there, altaheritagefoundation.org. We run completely on donations. No one gets paid for any of the work we're doing. This is work that we do after we get off of our normal jobs. We need help. We're trying to expand our network of folks that do this. So we have archaeologists in Oregon, throughout California, and we want to expand wider because we can expect the West to have this problem continue, and we need to train folks to get them ready to provide local responses to disasters. So if you want to get involved, altaheritagefoundation.org has a sign-up sheet. We'd love to add you to our roles. And thank you, everybody, for your time.